Hello, hello, what is up, gamers? What is good? We're going to be talking about the month of July 2025 in Weekly Shonen Jump. A couple days late, been busy, been out of town, but the whole time I was eagerly awaiting the opportunity to make this video. I really love making these, they've become some of my favorite YouTube videos to make. This month, not as crazy as June. June was probably about as crazy as any month will get, with 4 series ending and 3 new series debuting. Pretty overwhelming. This month, a lot more typical. We had 1 new series, which is still very exciting, and a series return after a multi-month absence. We're actually going to start right there, talking about the brand new series Ping Pong Peril, which started right at the beginning of this month. So we got 4 chapters to talk about. And I'm going to say right off the bat, I like this one. I think it's not for everybody. I'm sure it's got some detractors out there. But right away, it had kind of an attitude that almost reminded me of like Fukumoto. Just the premise of somebody being miserably in debt and having to play an extremely high stakes game of ping pong. The juxtaposition between, a game that's normally pretty low stakes, pretty fun, something that kids play, something that you can definitely compete in, but this underworld feeling of it, and putting it in a scenario where it's not just normal ping pong, but ping pong peril itself. A version of ping pong where every environmental factor is in play. The initial match taking place with a metal ball on a metal table, sparks flying out everywhere, a fire gets started, it's almost impossible to see. And our hero, a former ping pong champ in high school who became disillusioned and quit, and now is working with his sister to try to survive this situation where they've been left with this unmanageable debt by their parents. Again, kind of Fukumoto-y, just stumbling into this scenario where you desperately, desperately need money, running into a mysterious benefactor who fronts him the money to gamble on Ping Pong Panic. It's, again, like, just this sort of veneer of the underworld, this veneer of money being a focus, of this ruthlessness, this everything goes sort of attitude, while at the same time focusing so much on the game, on the mechanics of the game, on eking out an advantage through all the sort of niche scenarios that emerge in each ping pong scenario. All of that I loved. I thought that premise was great. I think it's such a change of pace for Jump. We really haven't seen a series with this kind of attitude or feel, maybe ever. Certainly for quite a long time. We've had like Underworld manga and like delinquent manga and stuff, but this very like gambling oriented spirit. And even though it's like sports, and it does have sort of the feel of a sports manga as well. The protagonist being this sort of disillusioned but talented player that needs to rekindle his interest. Definitely a sports manga cliche. But again, just sort of operating in new mode. I felt like it had potential right away. I liked that they got a full game in within the first chapter. It had that back and forth. It had him feeling confused and lost, but then slowly piecing together a strategy, executing it. A counter strategy emerges. He has to go yet a step further. I was like, all right, yeah, this is how it works. This is how you write a series like that. Showed a lot of competency, and it showed a lot of potential as well, because the whole idea is you can play ping pong anywhere. Any objects can be your paddles. Any objects can be your ball. And they put that right into action by getting the second chapter. He gets right into the next battle. I loved that as well. Not a whole bunch of futzing around, battling against a bartender where they use the bar as the table. And if you know what a bar looks like in a little standing bar type place, it's an L shape and it connects to the wall. So you may wonder, how the heck do you like return balls that are bouncing to the other side of the ball? What do you do if the ball hits the wall? What do you do to cover like this extremely long narrow side And how does that differ from covering the wide short side? And it's great because your mind kind of immediately leaps to all of these questions posed by the scenario and by the environment. And then one by one, they address them in exciting ways that it comes up. You know, serve after serve, yet another element gets introduced in either player's strategy, and then they have to work it out. They have to come up with countermeasures. It's great. I also really like that right away they addressed kind of a lingering question that often haunts series like this, and I think often to its detriment, which is kind of a question of morality. And when it comes to gambling, when it comes to a zero-sum game with extremely high cash stakes, is there always a moral imperative to kind of let the person who needs it most win? You know, like, are you actually going to be able to sleep at night if you beat somebody in a gamble like this and then you find out that they even more desperately need the money than you? Everyone here is obviously desperate. Nobody would be playing this game if they had stability, if they didn't have an urgent need for cash. And they address this head on in chapter 2, which I really liked, where the bartender is like, hey man, look, my daughter is sick in the hospital and she is dying. I never get, okay, this is a tangent. Why are people always like needing money for hospital bills in Japan? Japan has healthcare. I've never understood this. What are they paying for? This isn't America. Anyways, he needs the money for his sick daughter in the hospital. And this makes our MC like falter a bit. And he's like, that's not good, man. I told you that to trip you up. And it's kind of neat, like this sort of like genre trope acknowledgement where typically the opponent has a sob story and it kind of complicates the scenario, and then the MC is put into the spot where in order to be heroic they consider self-sacrifice or they consider some other option or whatever. Here he's like, no, I'm doing this to manipulate you. You need to really steel your resolve against this because this isn't going to be the only time that this happens. And our MC is like, okay, you're right. I just have to win. I have to just not care about anything you're saying and beat you down into the ground. And there's interesting parallels between this sort of like ruthlessness and this idea of like, at the end of the day, he also needs the money and he's not responsible for anybody else's sob story. And the pressure that was put on him when he was competing in high school. They start to kind of like sprinkle in this idea of the ruthlessness that he experienced then and how that kind of led to his current burnout and stuff. This idea of mercy, giving anyone mercy when it comes to a game like this kills their career because that's the moment where they truly recognize themselves as like not a worthy competitor. And that even if you just demolish them, it's better to demolish them sincerely and allow them that dignity. And he kind of carries that lesson forward and applies it in the battle against the bartender. It's really good escalation, really good finale to that battle. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of cooking. And again, right after that, boom, very next chapter, chapter 4, we're getting into battle number 3. The pacing is great. It's exciting. I love that in this chapter, kind of starts with more like comedy and talking about the general premise. This mysterious benefactor shows up and hobnobs with his sister, which freaks him out because he obviously wants to keep all of this shady, dangerous business away from his sister. The pretty funny scene where they're trying to come up with like a fake story without being able to communicate. Then they go to a bathhouse to unwind, but guess what? He's immediately roped into another battle at the bathhouse using the buckets as paddles. And I was like, that's great. Like, just this kind of like manicness, this franticness where opponents are lurking anywhere and you just constantly have to keep jumping into the peril and winning again and again. Really, really exciting stuff. I think this was a great start. I feel like if they let it get legs going, you know, if they let it kind of continue at this pace, just enjoying matches, coming up with different scenarios, coming up with different opponents, coming up with different ways to play ping pong and techniques and stuff that emerge from that, I think there's a lot of potential there. I think if they need to, like, escalate the stakes or something, though, if they need to, like, veer too far off course of this premise, if they start having to introduce more recurring characters, I think it could also go very bad. I think this is a series that needs to remain very, like, pure and focused and hitting at what it's good at. So I hope it can succeed in that regard. I hope it can draw an audience being the way that it is and not need to, like, compromise and kind of dilute itself. Anyways, we'll give it an A for the first month. Very, very impressed. That's the highest rating I gave any of these debuts for their debut month. But you'll see a few other ones are growing on me as well. Next, let's talk about RuriDragon, which was on a relatively brief hiatus. I think it was gone for like 2 months, and now it's back. This series is really beset by a lot of unfortunate circumstances and stuff with the mangaka's health, which necessitates these, first the slower release pace that it's on a bi-weekly schedule normally, and then it takes frequent breaks on top of that. But you know what? It's all good. I really like this series. I think it's such a unique presence and Jump, just this very focused slice of life where, beyond the fact that she's a dragon, which is, to be fair, a big but, aside from that, is very grounded, very down-to-earth, very slice of life, very ordinary, just very much focusing on the emotions and the connections and the sensibilities and the struggles of these high school girls. And I think it's always really excelled at that. I think it has such a nice, comforting tone while still kind of being real and challenging, and has such kind of like a fresh, fun attitude where even when the characters are kind of melancholy, even when they're lamenting something or stewing in their emotions, there's a really kind of like bright forward push to it. A lot of things I really like about the series. Great art too. This chapter was pretty low-key, you know. We'd had a little arc with her gaining her freezing powers and stuff, a lot of focus on the draconic aspect of the series. Now it's much more back into the human world. She gets a little haircut. They talk about how poorly she's doing in school because she's had to miss so much school because of all this dragon stuff, and they decide to have a study camp. They're gonna have an overnight study camp so she can get as caught up as she can be, hopefully not have to take makeup tests, and thereby enjoy the summer with her growing collection of friends. And that was nice. We'll give it an A-, that chapter. I hope to continue seeing it fairly frequently going forward. I don't know, probably bi-monthly is about as good as we can hope for. But yeah, I was happy to see it back. It didn't go away for too long, and that's nice. Alright, next we have the Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi, which once again spares itself the final chapter. It really feels like it's coming close. I know that it's fairly popular. I know that it's been awarded various cover pages and stuff. I know that they celebrated its 1-year anniversary, which are all very, very good signs. But I just really can't see what the heck is going to happen after this. It really can only feel like the finale to me. And this month, even more, they just wrapped up more and more kind of outstanding battles. We return to Yuta and Sasaki, which is kind of the second most high impact plot relevant battle besides Kiyoshi and Ashura Roth. It was nice. It was emotional. It was very heartfelt. I thought that whole little arc with Yuta as a character and how it kind of reveals more about Sasaki and just their whole past and stuff. Very, very, very well executed. And then pretty much the rest of the month was just Kiyoshi versus Ashura Roth. I really like how this series does fight scenes. I think it's not like crazy unique or anything, neither in terms of like the concepts of what's happening. Just kind of energy blasts and slashes and transformations and a bit of punching and kicking and stuff. Nor is the depiction all that crazy either. Like, I think the art style in the series is really, really good and really well executed, but it's not, like, crazy creative or never before seen or anything like that. So it's like, I'm not really even sure why the fight scenes are so good. Having said all that, they just have like such a good punch to them. They just like, even when it's like the two most powerful characters just slugging it out, and on one level it kind of seems like they're not even taking any damage. So you're like, what punchiness? But on another level, it really does have this feeling of just like intensity, and you're always excited to see what kind of moves are going to come out. You're always excited to see the slight ways things are stylized in a unique way in this series. It's addictive. It has like a really visceral addictiveness that almost feels like eating candy or eating spicy chips or something, where maybe there's nothing so crazy about it. Maybe it's candy you've had before, but you just can't help it. Give me some more, yeah. So yeah, they just fight back and forth, and Ashura Roth transforms. Kiyoshi seems unmatched, but then various other things happen. Bigger and bigger attacks start filing back and forth. There's big focus on Ashura Roth's personality, that he feels like fixated on Kiyoshi, that Kiyoshi is the only one strong enough to stand against him. But then when he starts winning, he starts feeling very disappointed in Kiyoshi and then gets angry with him. It's like again, it's not like a personality that I've never seen before, but it's just executed in a way that's like really fun and really compelling, and you just want to see more of it. The big climax of the month is that Kyoshi's partner, Akari, arrives, tries to buy some time, tries to heal Kiyoshi. Ashura Roth tries to blow her up, but then Kiyoshi leaps into action, saves her, powers up again. It's all what you'd expect. Just this sort of back and forth. But now it's like, well, this surely is the finale, because this pattern has been happening throughout the last like few months of chapters, the few volumes of this series, with Kiyoshi and Ashura Roth's fight, where they kind of fight to a stalemate, then one of them powers up, and then it kind of like cuts to something else, or another character intervenes, or whatever, and then we cut back. And now we've just run out of other things to cut to. All of the other fights have finished. Everybody else has said their piece. Akari arriving is basically like the last thing that could happen. So this has to be the finale. I just hope that they get a good one. Like, I think they've earned it. I think the series has grown a fan base that should support this. I think it's big enough now that I would love for them to run like a 12 episode anime that just covers the whole the whole manga after it ends. I think that would be sweet. That would grow the fan base even more. And I hope that the mangaka is just sort of thinking, yeah, this was a good solid series that'll run for like a year and a half, and I'm gonna end it on the terms that I want, and get an anime maybe, and use that as the launch pad for the next project, which could be bigger in scope or whatever. That's what I'm hoping for, because as much as I love this series, and as much as I'd kind of like to see it continue, this has been such a good finale. This has been so definitive that it's like, I would actually kind of be pissed off if after this they were like, that was just the weakest of the Supreme Demon Overlords. There's 2 more you gotta fight. Kiyoshi, and all your friends who have already had their complete character arcs, I guess they'll just like fight again and have another character arc. So I really think this is it. I could see it ending next month or maybe the month after that. But like I said, I want it to have a good ending. I want them to have not just a chapter where Ashura Roth is defeated and everybody goes wahoo, and then they go, Kiyoshi will continue fighting his journey, but like a 3-chapter period at least. 1 with the fight finale, 2 with the big celebration and some sentimentality, 3 with a send forward, what are they doing next? Very sentimental, very fun finale chapter. I think they've earned that. I think that would be great if that was even just like the next 3 chapters. I'd be happy. We're gonna give it an A for the month. As I said, very solid stuff. Praising it a lot. It really was just like fighting, though. I think the real strength of the series isn't just in fighting. Like, the fights are great, but I hope that the other kind of strengths of the series, like the personality, the humor, the character designs, just the interactions between characters, the kind of cozier slice of life elements that get woven in. I hope those really come through in the finale. I think that can be very, very strong. Okay. Next, oh man, let's talk about the Elusive Samurai. Really, really crazy month this month. Only 3 chapters. It was on break once. Starting with the continuation of this idea of Takauji, the big final boss, now really coming to conflict with his brother, Tadayoshi. Totally irreconcilable now. Tadayoshi seeks out the Hojo, and they somewhat form an alliance. They somewhat form an ideal, a new god that he could serve under. They talk about how Takauji is subject to the whims of some horrible god that could destroy the world. You know, we were talking about this last month, and I was like, I don't really know what this means. This is clearly ahistoric that Takauji caused the Black Plague. And to me, I think this is... We're getting a lot of signs that things are diverging more and more from actual history. But again, I don't want to look into it yet, because if I start looking up the actual history, I will see spoilers one way or another. So Tadayoshi arrives in Suwa. Really great fourth wall breaking joke where somebody once again receives a new name. This happens so many times, and then they break the fourth wall and say, look, the readers are tired of it because all of the character names already sound pretty similar. So like, thank you, I'm not the only one struggling with that. Even Japanese people are struggling with that. Great. So they say, we're gonna use magic to make it so even though he has a new name, it will be written as the old name. Then there's just sort of a very slice of life kind of episode of Tadayoshi enjoying his time in Suwa. You get to see the cute side of Tadayoshi, and they kind of focus in again. I love when they do this sort of like personality analysis in a historic context, like thinking about Tadayoshi and his role in history. How suited was he to it? How does this explain why he went the way he did and Takauji went the other way? And basically, the thesis presented by this chapter is that to be a true ruler, to be someone in the position of Takauji, you need perversion and greed. You cannot be like Tadayoshi, who ultimately is quite selfless and considerate and self-humbling. You need to be delusional and insane and totally self-righteous. And that seems to have been proven true time and time again through all of history. And I could go on a long tangent about that, but let's just keep talking about the series. In the final chapter of the month, we had the most blatant, history-defying moment. And again, I don't really know what this depicts, but basically, Tadayoshi and Takauji clash. Tadayoshi has an overwhelmingly larger force. Takauji is annihilated, wiped off the map. Tadayoshi is victorious, and then it smash cuts to Takauji eating the narration bubbles, proclaiming his loss. He's roasting them over the fire and chowing down on them like they're big hunks of meat. And instead, Tadayoshi is defeated through totally inexplicable means. And again, like, is that different than what happened in history then? Or is this saying that what happens in history is so miraculous and so hard to explain that this is the explanation the manga is going with? I think it's the former. I think that probably in actuality this is where Tadayoshi defeats Takauji and becomes the new shogunate. I am not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's like a history thing that happens, is Tadayoshi ends up in that throne. Maybe. And this is the manga going, no. In our world, Takauji, he's the villain. He stays in power, and then he gets beaten. But I really, really liked that after this absurd, miraculous thing happens, it makes reference back to the beginning of the month where they're talking about their kind of pseudo alliance with Tadayoshi, and Tadayoshi is like, look, I just have to fight him. You can't really involve me in your plans beyond this, that we have this coinciding goal, but you can plan around the fact that I will try and lose. And it's basically suggesting that our heroes are now so attuned to the godliness, this maniacal godliness of Takauji, that they foresaw this ahistorical breaking of space-time, that they planned for the eventuality that even though there should be no way in heaven and hell for Takauji to defeat Tadayoshi at that time, they foresaw this and are now executing the next step of their plan in accordance with this. Crazy stuff. Really have no idea where this is going now, and I don't think even Wikipedia does anymore either. We are certainly moving full steam into a finale where all of the good guys fight all of the bad guys, or really all of the remaining good guys and bad guys fight, which there are becoming precious few. And I'm really excited for that, because the way they've built up Takauji and his miraculous luck and his immortality and his overwhelming charisma and all of these other absurd godly qualities, I'm so enthralled. Every time he shows up and does anything, I'm so excited. And as he is kind of shoved into the spotlight and the final showdowns approach, I think it's going to get really good. But again, I think it'll probably last less than a year from now. I think this is heading into the final battle, which is true of a couple other series that we'll talk about as well. But yeah, we'll give it an A plus for the month. Blacklash from Mocking Trunk. My boyfriend showed me a flub from a podcast he watches where the host says, South Park got Blacklash for Mocking Trunk. It cracks me up so much. Now, anytime I flub, I'm going to think of that, and I'm just going to, like, flub harder because I'm thinking of that, and I'm not going to be able to focus. Okay, what are we going to talk about next? One Piece! Crazy month. Only 2 chapters. We are in the thick of the Loki flashback, which turned out to actually be the Herald flashback, which turned out to actually be the Rox D. Zebek flashback. Oda had pioneered the trick flashback on Wano when he had Odin's flashback actually be Roger's flashback. And here he's gone one step further with the 3-layer flashback, in which we are currently in the bottom layer of, probably, learning about Rox D. Zebek's entire story and his crew and his ambitions. Then we need to jump back to the ultimate fate of Herald and his role with the world government and what the hell happened there and why all the other giants attacked him. And then what Loki did in that situation, and then what they did to Loki. And then finally we can pop out of the top layer and return to reality, where, if you forgot, Emu, the supreme leader of the world government, has been turning giants into demons, and they are rampaging across the entirety of Elbaf using some absurd space-time Othello game power. Do you remember that? It feels like a while ago already. But yeah, we're in the thick of this flashback. We find out about this long winter of Elbaf. We find out that the entire country has been going through such strain as Herald tries to completely reshape it in an image of peace and connection, during which, of course, Loki, his demonic brat, is rampaging across the countryside. And in the midst of all of that, Rox D. Zebek appears, who turns out to be Blackbeard's dad, which is crazy. And then you learn all about the stuff of Rock's flashback. You find out that he is a follower of Davy Jones, which is the first time Davy Jones has been evoked in such a concrete way. And probably non-coincidentally, he is also a big gamer of the Davy Jones fight, or the Davy back fight, which he used to collect his crew. His crew is awesome, by the way. But yeah, it seems to be hinting that Davy Jones is like some sort of underworld evil correspondent, opposite to Joy Boy, perhaps, to Nika. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. All at once, it's like badass new characters, big implications to the immediate story, big implications to like the most fundamental lore of the series, and just a compelling story on its own about these ambitious people that are at odds with the world and manifesting in different ways. Really, really fantastic stuff. If you want to hear me talk about it more, of course, there's videos for both of those chapters where I give my live reactions and just go in as much depth as I'm capable of on what I think all this means. I love One Piece. If that wasn't obvious, we're going to give it an S+ for the month. Next, we're going to talk about Blue Box, which is in the middle of a school trip arc. I've been enjoying this arc. It's been a good opportunity to see some side character action to kind of refocus on their struggles and their connections. And before, I'd kind of been, I don't know, like, not as big a fan of the side couple stuff as the main couple. And I think that's fine. I think that's kind of what you want in a rom-com. If you're more interested in the side couple than the main couple, then you're doing something wrong. But sometimes it kind of felt like they were just like, oh, okay, well, now let's kind of catch up with these characters, ticking a box, and sometimes the stories they came up with them just weren't the most interesting, weren't the most deep or anything. So here, I think they really did come up with good stuff. They came up with pretty powerful moments, decisive things where they're making decisive choices, moments of self-revelation, of kind of explaining their position, of connecting with one another, in a way that didn't really feel forced. It didn't really feel overly dramatic. It just felt quite naturally brought on by the circumstance of the school trip, which I think is great. I think that's the opportunity that you get when you have an arc where everybody is like sleeping in a hotel together, spending all day together, going to all these really beautiful places together, having to choose where they go with whom. It just sort of naturally invites situations like this, where it's like, oh, should I spend time with my friends or my boyfriend? And then Kyo showing up and being like, let's go spend time with your friends. And this question of, is he doing this for the sake of her friends? Is he doing this because he thinks that she is incapable of asserting herself? And then no, he's like, no, I did this selfishly because I want to spend time with you. And I was like, ooh, I like that. I liked that sort of like selfishness and hopelessness kind of bound up together. I really liked how that was depicted. And then they break up, the girl and her boyfriend, kind of in the aftermath of this. I really liked, she talks about an analogy of being in a relationship is like building a puzzle together, and at the start it feels like you can find so many pieces that fit together, but then slowly you realize that you each have a different picture on the box, that where you're aiming for in the big picture is not the same. More and more you find pieces that don't fit together. It's a pretty sad analogy, I guess. But I thought it was quite evocative, and I think it really does describe a lot the honeymoon phase of relationships, where it really does feel like, wow, this is miraculous. All the pieces are going together so easily. And it felt, yeah, like a good emotional maturity. So much emotional maturity in the series. Then we shift gears from focusing on, what's her name, Amane, to Hina. I really like, there's a scene where they're in the bamboo forest, and the teacher is talking about how their lives will be like bamboo, becoming more flexible as they grow taller and taller, more resilient, that it's unbreaking because it flexes. I like how Taiki kind of privately reflects on this. good moment of kind of like character revelation for him as well. He hadn't had much to do in the previous little arc, so I like that the focus kind of expands to include him again. Then him and Hina are stranded when the Shinkansen leaves. They're stuck in Kyoto together, and it kind of comes back to like, I'm sure this is gonna focus on Hina's unrequited, rejected crush on Taiki, kind of having like a finale to that. Sure. So like that I think is good. I think that deserves kind of a bit more closure. Just for her sake as a character, I think just for the story itself, I think it just kind of reflects best how the characters would really behave. So I think that is good. And then we cut back to Tokyo, where Chinatsu Senpai is kind of feeling a little lonely and learning how to kind of adjust not having Taiki regularly in her life. She meets up with Yumika. They play basketball. That's great. I really liked that as well. Again, emotional maturity. But there is one thing that I was like, what the heck is this? What is going on here? Which is that Chinatsu has a neighbor that keeps giving her like baked goods and stuff, being like a friendly neighbor, but he's like a handsome fella. And I'm like, where in the hell could this lead? Because already they've crossed a line where it's like something's gonna happen. They're not just showing these scenes for no reason. It's been hinted at kind of across a couple chapters that this is going on more and more explicitly. That this guy is probably interested in Chinatsu. This guy is kind of trying to size her up and figure out when to make a move or something. And it's like, obviously nothing is gonna happen. It's not gonna be NTR. That's ridiculous. Obviously it's not gonna be that. So we already know that. So it's kind of like, well, where else can this go? Like, is Taiki gonna find out and get jealous? Because that seems very kind of contrived and lame. Is he gonna turn out to actually be like dangerous and Taiki has to save her or something? Because that also feels like very, very contrived and like, okay, what's the lesson here? That Chinatsu shouldn't live on her own because it's unsafe? Like, that seems ridiculous too. Could it be that this guy just ends up being a genuinely supportive person who helps out Chinatsu? Maybe he's gay. That would be really cool. Maybe he's gay. And he just gives Chinatsu good advice and is there for her, and they talk about, oh, maybe he's lonely too for whatever reason, blah blah blah. That would be cool. That's the one golden thread where I'm like, this is actually a great element. Because otherwise, it's like, any other direction it goes, I'm like, this just feels beneath the series. It just feels like a little too cheap to just introduce some random hunk and conflict just kind of explodes out of there for like no reason. And I think really the only response to that would be befitting of the series is Chinatsu just being like friendly, maybe even making friends, but being like, yeah, I've got a boyfriend, and Taiki being like, oh yeah, your neighbor, nice to meet you. She said you gave her some baked goods. Yeah, it sounds tasty. I want to try some too. No jealousy, no conflicts, nothing happens. That would be the only like realistic thing based on the emotional maturity of the characters we've seen so far. And yet it's like, that's probably the least likely thing to happen, because what would be the point of doing that? What would be the point of including that in the story? So now I'm praying for the gay. I'm praying because I think that would actually be nice for Chinatsu to make another friend, maybe a friend that understands very specifically the challenges of living alone, and gay friend. Why not? I don't know. Straight women love gay dudes. Anyways, we'll give it an A+ for the month. I really am overall enjoying the school trip arc. I think it's going to move into a very satisfying finale that involves Hina having one last chance to kind of really spill her guts and get rejected again. But a nice finale for that kind of whole arc. So what's the stuff with the neighbor? Where's it going? What's going on? I don't know. Okay. Next, let's talk about Witch Watch, which, again, all I kind of can do talking about this when it's in this very episodic mode is just go through each chapter and talk about what I liked or whatever. I will say this, though, in very classic Witch Watch fashion, last month ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, where Nico found out that she has to go live with her mom for a month in, like, the witch village. And the way that it was set up, it felt like, oh, that's going to happen, like, right away. Like, that's going to be next chapter. She goes off to the witch village. And then they just don't bring it up all month. It's very classic Witch Watch. Set up a plot point and then just episodic sitcom gag humor. So this month, the first one is they all become obsessed with YY Wild stickers, which are little stickers that come with chocolate and talk about one of the YY Wild animals. And Morihito, just incidentally, as they're just kind of eating a few with friends, recognizes that there's actually, like, very intricate lore hidden across all of the stickers that tells this, like, surprisingly dark and complex tale of the kingdom of YY Wilds and the sordid history, and it's crazy. It's crazy. I like it because it's, like, one of those things that's just, it's real all over the place. That there's so many things like this, so many different rabbit holes you can stumble into, so many things with surprising depth, and just the juxtaposition of, like, that sort of rabbit hole and Morihito, who definitely has the personality to obsess over such rabbit holes, and the fact that it's, like, goofy cartoon animals, and the fact that it's on chocolates and that he gets fat from just eating chocolates all day to get all of the stickers and piece together the plot. And then the plot itself was very fun too. I don't know, banger chapter. I really, really liked it. I love things like this. I love reading about things like this or watching, like, a YouTube video essay on, like, did you know that the Kinder Bunny actually has 1 million layers of lore? Let's explore. So it's very, very fun capturing that in a chapter. The next one dealt with your classic river crossing puzzle, where you have 3 things you need to carry across a river. You can only carry one at a time. And if you leave certain subsets of those things together, it's no good. There's a million variations of this involving different kind of triangles of things that eat each other or whatever. The solution is often pretty much the same. But I really love these puzzles because of the UK office. One of my favorite scenes. First off, that's just one of my favorite shows ever. Maybe my favorite show ever. A friend of mine was just watching it, and I was talking to her about it. And the more I talked about it, the more I realized, like, no, I'm, like, a fanatic for this show. But one of my favorite scenes in it is they're doing, like, team building exercises. And Tim and Gareth have to solve one of the river crossing puzzles. And Gareth cannot stop making, like, really annoying, really lame quips about every single thing that Tim says. And it's so excruciating. And it just captures a certain type of annoying person who's trying to be funny that, like, I don't think has ever been so well captured. Oh, man, I just want to watch it now. It's so great. But then, of course, this becomes a puzzle involving Kanshi. The long-suffering Kanshi needs to be transported across the river as well, as he has been once again stuck naked in a perilous situation. They use magic, and the magic complicates things further, making it, like, a more complicated version of the river crossing problem. And then it ends in an excellent anticlimax. Very, very funny. Then one where the child actress star witch Chami reappears again. She has to shoot a commercial where at the end she has to, like, lift a dumbbell, and she's freaked out because she doesn't think she'll be able to lift it. So she gets Nico to make her stronger, and in a very fun kind of reprise of a theme from very early on in the series, because they don't understand the square cube law, instead of making her 5 times stronger, she's made 25 times stronger. And then hijinks ensue. Very good. And then the last chapter, perhaps the most classic of all of these, Nico casts a spell on Kanchi to make him really squishy and absorbent and rubbery. And hijinks ensue. A very, very classic chapter. Lots of really good gags. I've been watching the anime with my boyfriend as well. We just watched the one where she casts Elongate on everybody, and they all have like long ass arms and necks and nails and hair, and they're running around town trying to save people, and it's so great. The series Scat Dance as well is just so great at like whatever scenario has led to somebody looking insanely goofy. And that's it. That's the premise. That's what you're getting. They're goofy as fuck. Enjoy. Very, very good. We'll give it an A+ for the month. Next, we're going to talk about Kaedegami. This is one of the series that debuted last month. Let's check my Discord messages quickly and make sure there is nothing urgent. Why did this person comment in... Okay, whatever. Yeah, so when this started last month, I was kind of hedging my bets on it. Didn't seem super unique, and kind of just had sort of like a weird feel to it where at once it was kind of like violent and scary, but also kind of goofy, also sort of erotic. It had sort of this weird monogatari-ish vibe to it in terms of its premise that seemed to kind of carry over into the dynamics of the two main characters, which, as you can guess, because I said it's sort of monogatari inspired, is very fetishy and intense and strange. But I'd say in this month it started kind of hitting its stride. I think it's a series that, based on the premise and based on the characterization and based on the setting, needs to do a lot of this like front loading in a way that I think inexorably is going to be like pretty manic and pretty kind of like disjointed and all over the place. Just kind of getting all the elements out there on the table, like dumping a big bag full of shit on the table. But now that it's all out there and we're kind of like sorting it into a more coherent adventure, it's kind of cooking. So we had a little arc where they go into a town to try to meet someone that may know where her missing body parts are. And the whole town is transformed into donkeys. And it has like a really nice, creepy vibe. They linger a little bit on just kind of this sense of it's like a Twilight Zone episode or whatever, just kind of wandering among these strange beasts and their strange behavior. Only a 2-chapter arc. They wrap it up nice and quick. They find the demon, the Shenguai. There's a lot of like kind of Chinese terminology in the series. The Shenguai that turned everybody into a donkey. They figure out how to break the spell. Good little action scene. Good little climax. Again, very simple, but that's good. I think it paid off kind of the catharsis of the people turning back into humans. The little girl that had been enslaved by the Shenguai reuniting with her parents. Just having like space for those little emotional moments I think is really important. And still maintaining like a brisk pacing. Like they got all this wrapped up in 2 chapters. Then they meet with this scholar that knows where the body parts are, or has some idea at least. They retouch on the nature of him having this contract with her. The fact that their life and death are bound together now, that if one dies, the other dies. And if the other lives, they live. I don't know, whatever. And they present it as like, yeah, this is crazy. Maybe you shouldn't have done this. It's really, really heavy. But then they also kind of like show that they have like a very strange kind of sexual relationship too. Like she kind of jumps him. And it's like, huh? And again, it's like they're not beating the Monogatari allegations. But it had like an interesting vibe to me. It had like kind of an intense perversion that didn't seem like it was belittling the characters. It didn't seem like it was just done for cheap fan service or for shocking, tantalizing, whatever. But rather, it kind of reflected a deeper attitude of the series, a deeper attitude towards the characterization. It kind of promised that, like, these aren't things just being shown to you for random titillation or whatever, but rather this relationship is going to be, like, explored and fleshed out. Fleshed out. She's getting her body parts back. That this is, like, pointing at something more significant, more interesting. So yeah, then they set out. They're looking for her body parts, and they fight a big tiger dude. Sure. I like that they had a little bit of like lore and world building. This idea that those that are killed by a tiger cannot go to the afterlife, which has such a nice little poeticism to it that I looked it up to see if it was actually real, like folklore or whatever. But no. In this world, though, if a tiger kills you, you become a zombie basically. This guy fighting using the what is it called? The dismembered heads? What's it for the head? Decapitated heads? Flinging decapitated heads around and jumping off them. A nice battle scene unfolding already with some cool choreography, some kind of unique stuff. And again, the pacing just really, really nice, like getting into that fight immediately while still having time for like kind of the creepiness and the lore. I don't know, I'm liking it. It's coming together. It's coming together in a nice way. I think it could still get stupid. The stupidity is kind of like on the table. At the end of the day, the series that this most reminds me of, even more than Monogatari, is Nue's Exorcist. It's basically just like Nue's Exorcist, but set in a fantasy world. And I think if other busty babes start showing up and it becomes a little more harem-y or something like that, it could easily plunge into the stupid zone before I even notice. But until then, I'm really liking it. The art is cool. The characterization is very unique. The setting is great. The action scenes have been good. We'll give it an A- for the month. I'm excited to see more. Next, let's talk about Peak Kagurabachi. Peak! I think it had my favorite chapter of the entire series so far was this month. The big emotional climax with Samurai. The big finale of his fight with Chihiro. Seeing Iori again going into his daughter's room, choosing to finally use his regenerative phoenix ability to heal his eyes and see again. Just the scene of him opening his eyes is Kino, man. Is Kino. Is peak. That I was really, really happy with. Again, still a little confusing to me. Why were they fighting? Why were they just talking? Why? They were like, at that point, totally aligned on what they wanted to achieve. I guess in the end, it was like Samurai needed to have this emotional climax that what they were fighting at that point wasn't any like actual logistical difference. They weren't fighting to like achieve something via fighting itself. He was fighting to prove to Samurai that he needs to welcome himself back into the world, that he can do more with his eyes open, fighting for his daughter, reunited with his daughter, instead of this vigilante lone wolf mission of horrendous self-sacrifice. So it makes sense on an emotional level. It makes excellent sense on an emotional level. It's very Kino on an emotional level. So why am I quibbling about the logistics level? Who cares? So that all gets sorted out. Samurai is wholeheartedly a good guy again. He's on board with their plan that they're just gonna break the enchanted blades, which I guess is not trivial. I think the other thing that I was picturing that like is probably not how it actually works is I'm like, well, yeah, like let's get Chihiro to give it his best shot, and I was like, just put it in like a vice, and then he just takes a good whack at it, and that's how you break it. But I think it's gonna be, and maybe this is already said and I forgot, but they probably have to like break in battle or something, you know, I don't know, they have to have their powers unleashed and then still be beaten by the N10 or whatever. It doesn't matter. At any rate, They decide they're gonna go around and smash the blades, whether it be through my strategy, which makes a lot of sense to me, or through something more exciting. So we cut from there to the raid. They have to prevent them from getting to the enshrined swordmaster in the basement. The Kaminabi raid progressing really interestingly. Again, I had some like kind of quibbles with the setup for this, but I think the end result has been fantastic. Of just this kind of really chaotic thing unfolding over a whole bunch of layers. It does sort of seem like they had a bit of a false start where they were like, ooh, this is the proving ground or whatever, and here are like a bunch of named characters on each side who have personalities and powers that they've kind of front loaded, and now they're gonna fight. And now and I was like, oh, okay, this will be like maybe a couple chapters or something. Just forgot about it. I think they had a line where they were like, well, that was actually just kind of bait. And it's like, oh, okay. So I don't know if that was like deliberate, if that was to be like subversive, to make you think, oh, we're going to focus on these guys for a while, and then it's kind of brushed off and we're zoomed in on other stuff. I don't know if it's just later we're going to get more of that. But the whole thing does kind of have like this weird but enticing kind of cool aloof attitude. There's a scene where the Hishaku are just kind of like bantering about their assignment and about what they're expecting to do and stuff. And it felt a lot like Tarantino. It felt like, and I know that Hokazono Sensei is a big fan of Tarantino and his peers, probably like PTA and stuff. And probably that sort of dialogue writing and stuff, and just that sort of juxtaposition where people that are in a life and death scenario have this moment of kind of just aloof banter. And I was like, that's pretty cool. That's like not the sort of attitude you see in manga, especially shonen manga, too often. So it's a nice little bit of spice, this kind of cool ranch spice. So yeah, the raid continues. Right now it's very chaotic. So we kind of saw the Hishaku, their force, and now the Kaminabi counter force. I really, really like the way they are depicting just elite fighters coming out of the woodwork. This is something that happens in these sorts of arcs in a lot of different manga. Like Tokyo Ghoul was very good about this. Bleach, I think, was very good about this. One Piece and Ina's Lobby kind of has this feel where it's like all the defense systems are getting activated, and all of these like big personality, interesting, powerful characters where it like makes sense for them to be there. It would be weirder if there weren't a motley crew of characters like that there. Start popping up with this like really punchy, really exciting frequency. Where it's just like, and there's somebody else. She's on our side. She's the granddaughter of the person who made the white purity style. She's really good. And who knows how much she'll be involved in this arc. But she's here. And here's another guy. And here's another guy. Here's some crazy ass techniques that they just start busting out. Like the Whitebeard War in One Piece was also very much like this, where you don't even expect to have stuff explained after a point. You're just kind of caught up in the momentum of it and caught up in the feeling that like all the time you've invested with the cast that's been in focus. I think it's a great feat in world building to just be like, yeah, and there's like a dozen other dudes. They're just doing their own stuff, but they're also big personality and they also have all these unique powers. And now it's like everybody's just running around doing shit. Really, really fun times. I think they're kind of pulling off that feel very well. Of course, you know, that does not make for an entire arc. At some point, this raid is going to get more focalized. People are going to start kind of lining up against each other, I would imagine. So I'm getting kind of curious on how they're going to switch gears into that. I would say in previous arcs, something that I've criticized before is that it gets a little sloppy in terms of too many like simultaneous climaxes. Too many scenes where simultaneously you're having like an action scene climax but also like an emotional climax. And so far, this latest arc has been really good about that it doesn't put too much stuff in parallel all at once. So I think it's going to be kind of like, how can they navigate that and still make it really impactful, still make it really punchy, and not just have it be like way too much shit going on all at once. Anyways, we'll give it an A plus for the month. Really, really good stuff. As I said, that first chapter with Samurai restoring his own sight, I think it's the high watermark for the whole series so far for me. That really moved me. All right, next, let's talk about Oter of the Flame. This was one that I was really, really big on when it started, and then I don't know, it's just kind of wavering for me. The flame is flickering. I want them to add more fuel, but I'm worried that the great axe will snuff it out before it really gets a chance to get going. This month, I think, really played to its strengths, was really in a mode that I appreciate from the series. Not training, not yapping, but good old-fashioned action sequences. They're in this dwarven village that has been frozen over. They're trying to restore heat to the dwarven forge. The dwarves have all been enslaved by the ice army. They want to reignite the dwarven spirit for providing weapons and armor, and be like, help us instead. So fun sequence with like a mine cart to pummel into the ice fortress. Oter squares off against one of the big six. I think they're called like the 6 demon horns or something, the generals of the ice army. Good battle, good choreography. The bad guy is like pretty scumbaggy. I kind of like that they tried to go for both, where Oter and the bad guy are talking in terms of like warriors and respect and honor in the battlefield and blah blah blah, but he's like a real evil piece of shit. And I think it's kind of poignant to kind of think about how like both cultures not only do have like a concept of honor and warrior and blah blah blah, but like it's like not that it's like transcendental, it's just also not incompatible with like being a total scumbag. So I don't know, yeah, I thought his characterization was interesting. I liked him squaring off against Oter. I liked the mutual respect they had for one another. Big climactic moment where Oter, of course, reignites the forge and the iron spirit awakens. Oter, of course, is imbued with the fire spirit, so now they kind of collect this other element. He powers up. He's able to wield both at once. This is very remarkable, it seems, in this world. I think it was supposed to be remarkable that he was able to wield one spirit. And now they're like, but surely he can only wield one spirit. Oh my god, he wields 2 spirits. Which was a little strange, but whatever. He beats the bad guy. At this point, I'm like, is the speedrun happening? I see the table of contents. I'm not blind to this. Maybe they're aiming for a 20 chapter wrap it up. Because I just kind of felt like that battle moves very quickly, and this acquisition of the Iron Spirit really feels like, okay, this is the thing, and we're gonna keep doing it. What do you think? Are you on board? This is your last chance. Hop aboard, or we're gonna sink. And then, yeah, confirming my suspicions. After that, we get another kind of shonen classic, which is your post-battle escalation. An even stronger bad girl demon thing shows up. But then 610, their hero, shows up, which I felt like was a kind of story card they had been planning on playing much later. You know, he was only gone for like 1 arc. He's like the only other character, so like of course he shows up. But again, pretty badass. The fighting stuff is good. The choreography is good. Just kind of the iconography of the series with all the runic stuff and Viking stuff is good. But I am thinking, ooh, it's not doing so hot. Unfortunately, because it is Oter of the Flame. I really do feel like maybe they're in the speedrun mode and he's going to get a bunch of spirits in a montage. I don't know. I'll see. I don't know what's really going to happen. I think they'll probably continue their journey and then there'll be some sort of power-up skip, because clearly the author has conceptualized a lot of like different spirits and different powers and different settings, which is great. I think that's how you got to approach it. I don't know why you would have all those ambitions, all those ideas, and then do like 4 pages of training right at the beginning of your series. Strange. I don't know. I've got other such critiques. But my guess is that they're going to try to like speedrun through that stuff. And that's kind of exciting. I think that they've probably got a lot of badass moments in mind and cool settings in mind and cool attacks in mind. And I just hope that we get to see a whole bunch of them before the ultimate weapon of the axe swings down upon its head. So we'll give it an A for the month. I think really solid stuff. The action sequences especially really make this for me. Just has a very, very good attitude. I really hope that we get to see more. Alright. Let's talk about Kill Blue. What the hell is going on here? Okay, so first off, I'm a genius. Let's review. Let's review. Hold on. I can find this out. Okay, I can't find this out. Am I not, like, able to search my whole document? Or did I not... Did I never make a note? Did I not... Okay, well, what I wanted to do was search my own notes to find out when it was that I proposed the theory that Noren was also an adult that had been de-aged using the magic wasp thing. But it was a while ago. If you're a real Keats the YouTube head, maybe you can tell me. That would be great. I guess I didn't make a note about it. I'm pretty sure it happened during the arc where they go to her vacation house. I think there was like a clue there that I picked up on where it shows like her file next to a file about the wasp or whatever. And that was like back in... That was like a year ago. Not bad, because it was confirmed. Indeed, it was confirmed. She was an adult that also got turned into a kid with the power of the magic wasp. And I had been like pretty convinced of this. They put forth too many clues for it to be like a mistake. But then they had this whole thing about Noren getting a crush on Juzo. And I was like, oh, what? But she's an adult. He's a little boy. They swerved that, though, because she got amnesia. She was de-aged, then she got amnesia. Now she's re-aged, she's an adult again, and she remembers everything. And the way they presented this twist, the way that they revealed this, was so, like, anticlimactic and, like, nonchalant, that I started to wonder, like, oh, maybe it was obvious. maybe I'm not a genius. Maybe I'm not a genius, and it was obvious, and that's why they didn't really make a big deal out of it, because probably for the most of the diehard readership, they were like, finally. I don't know. I would prefer to believe that I was a genius, and they just made it an anticlimax, because the series is really weird. And this series is really weird. Remember all that stuff about the student council? Because I don't know if Fujimaki-sensei does. That arc is just over. It doesn't matter anymore. Turns out Noren's dad is like the big villain. So obviously Juzo does not need to appease him anymore. They team up. The principal and Ogami Juzo team up to battle against them. I'm not really sure why. Because it's like there's basically 3 factions now, and I don't really get why those 2 team up. But sure. And everything is out in the open where the Home Ec Club knows that Juzo and stuff are hitmen. They don't know that Juzo was an adult. Okay, whatever. It's just like a lot of stuff that like doesn't really make sense. And then yeah, there's like battles are gonna happen now, And the battles in this series can be, like, kind of good. They're pretty hit and miss, I think. So I don't know, man. It's not the worst the series has ever been. Because, like, it's stupid, but at least it's, like, impactful. It's stupid, but it's, like, big climactic stupid. Where I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And it's not wasting time stupid. It's not, like... it's stupid, and what's the point of this? What could possibly be the consequence of this? You're just wasting my time. Here it's just like they're suddenly throwing all the cards down on the table. I swear to God, this series has gone through like 3 arcs already that I thought would be the finale. And then they were just like, whoa, wait a minute, hey, whoa, see, we're climbing the table of contents. How about another 3 volumes? How about we do another story arc? And maybe it'll happen again. Maybe somehow after this it'll happen again, but I doubt it. It's crazy. I don't know. This feels like the end game. All good guys are fighting all bad guys. And some of the bad guys and good guys teamed up. It's just another sign of the end times, you know, the lion lies down with the lamb. I don't know, man. It's like, I don't hate it. I'm interested. I want to see how the hell they're going to make sense out of a lot of this. I am really curious to see what the ending is going to be. Are Juzo and Noren both de-kidified, turned back to adults, gonna get, like, married or something? Like, it kind of feels like they're going in that direction, and that's the whole point of her also being a de-aged adult. But guess what? I don't really think there was ever a point in making Juzo a de-aged adult either. They kind of, like, forgot about that for, like, 95% of the series. And it just became, like, a stranger and stranger element of the series that they didn't really seem to care about. So, it's so weird. It's so weird. I never thought somebody who made Kuroko's Basketball, which you gotta love it. It's a very solid series, but it is such a by-the-book, straightforward, like, just play to your strengths sports shonen. I love it for that. And then to be like, oh, I don't want to make more sports manga. He made that, and he made Robot X Laserbeam, which is about golf. I haven't read it yet. I want to make a manga about hitmen and home economics and a guy who was a hitman, but now he's a kid. And also, there's like a criminal underworld, and he's always getting into gunfights, but then he has to make spaghetti. And then there's girl stuff, and some of the girls like him, and some of the guys like her, and some of the girls like her, and some of the guys like him, and then also, and it's like, what? Was this all kind of cooking in your head while you were just writing about basketball and golf, and you had like 80 other ideas, and then you just like started doing all of them in like a random order? What a weird series. Okay, we'll give it a B-. Not the best it's been, not the worst it's been. I was kind of like getting into this stuff with the student council. Some of those characters were like kind of interesting to me, the president especially. And now they just got written out. There's like no reason for them to appear in this arc. There's no reason for them to appear again in the series because it seems like it's gonna end soon. It's so strange. Okay, let's move on to me and Roboco. Very solid month for this series as well, as always. Great series, love it so much. The reintroduction at the start of the month of the character Kaori, who I'm not a huge fan of. It's like the cliche of, oh, the very adventurous boy that I played with as a kid turned out to be a tomboyish girl, and now I'm all flustered and doki doki because she's matured into a stunning young lady or whatever. And it's like, the kind of romantic elements of the series, just because it's so kiddie, you know? It's because it's such a gag comedy that's aimed for like 12-year-olds, that when they do like the romance and stuff, it really doesn't hit for me. But sometimes it can be like cute. But like kind of the like love triangle thing with Madoka and Bondo and Kaori and also Gorilla's sister, the mangaka, and just this like weird kind of like harem situation he's in almost. It's one of the weaker parts of the series for me, but I do like the principal gag of this chapter, where Madoka feels really jealous of Kaori and all of the connections she has with Bondo, and keeps assuming that Kaori is doing much more scandalous and adult and bold things than she's actually doing, which was all just to set up a trap to catch stag beetles. I don't know, I liked it. And then on a nice sentimental note where they decide that Madoka and Kaori should be friends. That's fine. Then there is a chapter celebrating 5 years of Roboco. This is the second longest running series in Jump. Isn't that crazy? Not counting Hunter x Hunter, because I don't know what's going on there, but it's One Piece and Roboco tier, baby. Nothing's running like the robot. Yeah, so 5-year anniversary, they do Annie-song karaoke. There's a fun discussion of the rules of karaoke, which was very opportunely timed. A friend of mine had a karaoke birthday party. Afterwards, I went out with him and another friend to debrief and have a few more beers. And we talked about the rules of karaoke. We talked about what things worked, what things didn't, the flow of the whole evening, what was getting people pumped, how were different people behaving. Very neurotic, very analytic. But I love karaoke. I do a lot of karaoke with various groups and stuff. So this sort of stuff interests me because these rules are emergent. Even if nobody acknowledges them, even if nobody writes them down, even if nobody holds anybody to them, they exist. There is a cause and effect. It's like the rules of physics more than like the rules of soccer. Anyways, they talk about that. They do all these Jump Annie songs and do reactions to them. And then the big announcement is that Roboco is also getting like a music video, which is great. When are they going to bring the Roboco movie to Canada? Speaking of Roboco celebration, I really want to watch that. Then, very classic chapter, Roboco and Meiko switch bodies. Meiko being the much more conventional made robot. Very classic kind of gag comedy premise, very silly. But really kind of like refocuses everything on this core premise of, hey, they've got made robots, which is like a weird premise. You can go a while kind of forgetting about it because like any gag comedy, it drifts very far from that core premise in most chapters. But yeah, like talking about what a maid should be doing and why is Roboco so bad at it? And how should we treat Meiko? Can Meiko be selfish? Is that what she's learning? Very fun. And then the most recent chapter, Roboco stuck in the closet because Bondo doesn't realize she's home and starts doing really cringeworthy stuff, thinking that he's alone. Like singing, pretending he's in a band and singing, role-playing scenarios where he gets to act really brave and cool, practicing his Kamehameha, drawing scars and muscles all over his body. Very fun times, just a kind of classic escalating embarrassment and cringe with Roboco doing her tsukomis from the closet. And at times, like, kind of relatable. I'm sure to everyone. I'm sure I'm not self-reporting by saying this, but, like, the scene where he's imagining a scenario where he does something, like, really brave and awesome, and people are, like, thanking him for it, and he's, like, trying to figure out what line he should say to, like, accept their gratitude in a cool way. I was like, yeah, who among us hasn't rehearsed the scenario like that? I don't know. Very fun. Not a whole lot to say. Roboco going strong. I look forward to reading it every week. As I said, it's the longest running series in Jump right now, besides One Piece. And there's no ceiling on gag comedies, man. There's nothing that we're, like, waiting to happen. There's nothing that we're gonna get, like, impatient if, like, Madoka and Bondo don't become a couple or something. There's just gonna be endless things to riff on and talk about. There's always gonna be new series starting and new series ending to make jokes about. There's always gonna be seasons and activities and celebrations and holidays. Gag comedy can just go and go and go. Look look at Kochikame, man. Kochikame, which is having a special post-retirement chapter in next week's Jump, by the way, ran for 1,960 chapters. How far can Roboco fly? We're going to find out. I'll give it an A for the month. All right, let's talk about Sakamoto Days, which announced pretty recently, like a few days ago, that we are indeed in the final arc. The phrase they used was, the final battle is beginning. And this kickstarted a whole bunch of discourse. Now, I really try not to read shonen discourse on the internet. maybe like with particular people I'll talk about it, and obviously I make these videos and read your comments, and that's great. Please leave comments on anything I've said, anything you want to talk about. That's great. I invite that form. But like going on Twitter or going on Reddit, going on 4chan to talk about shonen anime, no thank you, because a lot of people out there are 14, and I don't want to read a 14-year-old's opinion on anything, let alone manga that I love. So I did something stupid, and I did that very thing, and I read a whole bunch of comments on Twitter under the post that announced this we're in the final battle thing. And where do I begin to diagnose these 14-year-olds and their follies? First off, a lot of people seem to parse this as like literally meaning the final battle. Like it's gonna end in like 2 chapters, and somehow the next chapter is gonna be like Sakamoto versus X. And it's like, what? Like, that is just so nonsensically bad faith. Like, okay, yeah, if that was the case, I could see why they'd be mad. If it was literally announcing it's ending next chapter, this is it, I would be a little mad. But no, it obviously means this is the final arc. And then there was a lot of people that seemed to understand it was the final arc, but seemed like shocked by that as well. And I was like, what? Like, wasn't that kind of obvious? Like, and to be fair, all the way up until kind of the climax of the JAA jail arc, the jailbreak arc, I was like, wow, this could run for a long time, because there's still so many potential arcs that we could have between now and the finale. And I was kind of surprised that after that they started really gearing up to have an every good guy versus every bad guy finale. But that was so obviously what was going on. Like, the JAA took over Japan and gave everyone a gun and said it was open season on assassination. They blew up the Sakamoto's store. There's like not really much place to go from there. All of the good guys have aligned themselves. All of the bad guys have aligned themselves. Sakamoto got put into like a coma. X took over adopted the personality of like the canon's strongest character, Mr. Takamura. This really obviously seemed like the final arc to me. I was really surprised that a lot of people were like, I thought it was gonna keep going and go to a different country, like they were gonna fight assassins in America or something. And it's like, what? Really? You thought that? I don't know. I mean, maybe that would be cool, but like, I don't know. And then a lot of people were like, wow, series can't just run for very long anymore, can they? Bro, I ran for 223 chapters and counting. And I'm pretty sure this last arc is gonna last for like, I don't know, at least into next year. Maybe a whole year from now. There's gonna be a lot of fights. We've got like 20 people on each team, and they're all gonna fight. There's probably gonna be like 1v1 choreographed fights for like a lot of them. There's still a lot of like little emotional climaxes that are gonna get paid off and stuff that are probably gonna take like a chapter each. There's a lot of ground to cover. This series is gonna run for a long time. It's already run for a long time. Then we got into the people that have what I call the checklist mentality when it comes to shonen, and we're all susceptible to this to varying extents, where you have a bunch of scenes that you want to see, a bunch of like battles, characters that you want to see come back, and you just have this like mental checklist of stuff that you think needs to happen for the series to be good. Things that you think ought to happen between now and the end of the series. And I think it's a really bad way to read shonen manga, but it's hard not to fall into that camp because it's like, yeah, you want to see those guys fight. Me too. But I saw a lot of people busting out their checklists and going, this guy never came back. We never saw this guy fight this guy. We never saw how strong this guy was. We never saw the payoff to this thing. We never saw this guy come back. And it's like, I don't know, man. A lot of those things I never thought was going to happen. But, you know, I probably had my own little checklist subconsciously of stuff that I thought was going to come back. Anyways, I found it all very frustrating. Reminded me that I should never look at these comments. But let's talk about the actual month of chapters. They had this big climactic battle against the New Order in the aquarium. I thought that was great. Sakamoto gets stabbed. He looks pretty bad. He's on the verge of death. Shin uses ESP to kind of like biohack his brain and make his heart start beating, like superseding his nervous system, which is cool. Nagumo reappears. They start to coordinate and plan all of these former members of the Order that are now betraying the New Order and the JAA. Again, all the good guys are getting ready to fight all the bad guys. Sakamoto is on life support. Obviously, he's going to wait until a pretty crazy major climax to reappear and swing the tide of battle. That's fine. That's great. Another classic. Oki and Nagumo make contact. This is kind of like the final opportunity to just talk it out. And of course, they don't. They have a super badass battle that lasts the last few chapters. They do card jitsu. If you've never heard of card jitsu, look it up. It's the most deranged form of combat sport ever invented. Two guys just fight in a car, and they can use every aspect of the car as a weapon. They do some pretty solid card jitsu here in Sakamoto Days. We see Sakamoto in this like very intriguing place between life and death, where what's her name? The aunt is there. Why can't I think of her name? Whatever. More fighting. They fight in Denny's. This is great. Denny's fight, another ancient form of martial arts. You can search for top 10 Denny's fights for a great video. Becomes like warfare. I remember one where it's like the two battling parties had like stacked up tables to make like fortresses, and then were just like whipping cutlery and glasses at each other over the battlements. Amazing. Yeah, they introduce even more bad guys. It feels like the bad guy team is outnumbering the good guy team now. But I bet probably a lot of good guys are going to come back out of the woodwork from previous arcs and stuff. Oh no, I'm checklist thinking. Well, maybe that will happen. At any rate, there's a lot of bad guys. They introduce a few more that seem very entertaining. And yeah, it's the final battle. I'm not surprised. I'm not disappointed either. I just assume, and I think I have every reason to assume, that this is going to be a long, substantial final arc. Lots and lots of fights, lots of awesome shit going down. Good stuff, good stuff. We'll give it an A+ for the month. Very, very solid. Next, let's talk about Ichi the Witch. We finally finished up this big Bakugami arc. The next kind of conflict was whether or not Gokuraku would come with them and join their party. And I felt like this was significant, not just in terms of that immediate situation and that immediate character, but also just like, oh, is this a Nakama gathering manga? Is this a series where their party grows and grows from arc to arc? And it turns out, yes. There's an emotional scene where his country sends him off. It's kind of an inverse of the Alabasta scene in One Piece. He decides to be Ichi's comrade and head out. It's like good. Maybe it's a little flat. I don't know. As I said, I think I talked about this at length in the last video. But I think this arc was like pretty good. But there was various things they could have done to, I think, make it a lot more emotionally impactful and just kind of like give a sense more of the before and after so that we can really understand the gravity of what just happened. And as it stands, it just kind of feels like this weird, like, uh, okay, we're good now. See you later. Like, it didn't really feel realistic. It didn't really feel like it had much weight at all. They just kind of all applaud him and were like, we get it now. You were trying to help us. And it's like pretty nice again. Just like the rest of the arc, there's nothing really wrong with it. I just feel like it didn't have the weightiness that it could have. You know, you compare it and contrast it to like the Alabasta finale scene, holding up the sign of their bonds of camaraderie. Obviously, Alabasta was a lot longer. Obviously, One Piece was a lot longer at that point. They had a lot more time to build up those things. But I think they also just like chose scenes more deliberately. They focused more on like the suffering. They focused more on like what a major impact this is. I don't know. Anyways, it is what it is. It's still good. It's because it's good that I'm making critiques like this, I guess. It's because it's good that I wanna zoom in on why I don't think it's like great. But it is very good. Then we get a scene where Bakugami is hanging out in the magic circle, which is like the mine palace where all of Ichi's captures live together. A very weird scene where like Ichi comes in there and like lays down the law with Bakugami. Feels very out of character for him. I don't know. Like they kind of have this idea of like Ichi is kind of goofy. He's kind of naive. He's like Luffy-esque in a way. He's like a good guy. He's got this like friendliness, this camaraderie. And then also like Luffy, they want to have scenes of like intensity where it's like stuff crosses the line for him. This like primal hunter instinct where he goes, oh, it's death for death. Like, you've tried to kill me, so I'm okay with trying to kill you. And I think most of the time they get it like pretty good. Here I just felt it was like a little weird to just kind of like focus on that scene, that kind of aspect of his character when the rest of the scene was like very comical and light. Anyways, they get to the magic capital. They have to take Gokuraku to the Witches' Council because he's been this known menace trying to run around capturing magic using all these unlawful magic artifacts, blah, blah, blah. Turns out it's okay. His sentence is basically suspended. A whole bunch of people at the Magic City are very fascinated with the sort of body modding he's been doing. Fun stuff. A lot of really good characters. You know, every kind of like major player in the Witches Association they've introduced so far, which really just has been Toga Ice and Des. I both really like both of those characters, and I feel like they've put an equal amount of thought and effort into all of the other ones, even if we just see them like briefly. Just these little snatches of personality, just this kind of growing understanding of how this world works and how all these personalities fit together. I like it. It's good. This is the stuff that the series is like really good at. And then my favorite chapter of the month, my favorite chapter in a while, Ichi is taught about money. He's learning how civilization works bit by bit. He's given an assignment to go spend money and to like understand how it works. Lots and lots of little bits of world building within that just feel very joyful and just done for the sake of having a richer world, having a world where they really think about how would people use magic, how would the society of witches operate. Kind of reminds me of Witch Hat Atelier. Has kind of like a similar vibe to its world building, although of course the actual world building is still pretty different. Like the fact that they run into a bunch of merch for Jess, I think was great. I think her character is so funny, and the fact that she's like super popular among fans of the witches is really fun. Then a nice little sentimental moment where he buys a present for Des. Really good stuff. Now we're moving into the ball. The reporter witch girl that's with them has an older sister that's like senior in the Magic Association. That's going to become a thing. They're going to flesh out her character some more. Yeah, I don't know. This is really good stuff. I think this mode is actually better than anything else for the series right now. Just because it gets the world building, it does the characterization really well. The settings are really fun. The art is so vibrant and detailed. I hope they stay in this mode for a little while longer. And then I hope we go fight a big animal, man. I hope we do some hunting, you know? I hope that the stakes don't have to go so crazy all the time. Anyways, we'll give it an A for the month. Very solid stuff. Next, we have Akane-banashi. We are in the thick of this Rakugo competition arc, which is becoming a very, very substantial arc indeed. We've already seen these characters square off once before. At that time, it was like every performance got like a chapter, including like the judges' remarks and stuff, or maybe 2 chapters. Maybe lead in, start of performance, 1 chapter, second chapter, end of performance, critique. Now Hikaru takes up this entire month. She gets an entire month worth of chapters, 4 chapters devoted to her performance, her character backstory, little flashbacks interspersed, the critique of her. It's a long arc, man, because I assume that Karashi is going to get the same, and then of course Akane is going to get a big climactic finale too. It's like fine. It's good stuff. I love everything this series does. It's great. And I would prefer this to like rushing through it. I would prefer this to feeling like, oh wow, we barely got to see that. The fact that we're going to get to see the full performance from each of these and get so much into their characters. And, you know, this could be like the finale for these 2 rival characters. I don't know. I think it would be kind of weird if they did a 3rd competition battle later. I think this is going to be the moment where they've left it all on the table. They've brought it to bear. They've done everything they can. And then Akane takes that next step further. And it's that moment where, and we've seen examples of this like throughout the series and the previous generations of Rakugo. People do stratify. There only so many people can become Okanban. And it's like showing this moment where Akane takes that definitive step forward past them, despite all their best efforts, despite Akane stumbling in the first round, despite her having this overwhelming challenge of no laughs. And then yeah, their character arcs might be done. I don't know. Like unlike Sakamoto Days and Elusive Samurai, you know, 2 other long-running series that I think are probably going to end sooner than later. This one I think still has a lot to do, a lot of places to go, but I do think it's also reasonable to think that they're going to start like wrapping up plot elements definitively. And that might seem contradictory, it might seem strange to say that, but like, I don't know. I think they really made it clear this is Hikaru's definitive performance. This is everything her Rakugo is or can be. This is her arc as a career. Maybe she'll still get promoted. Maybe she'll become a bigger and bigger draw. But like, this is the moment where we see if she can aspire to the same greatness as Akane. And it's like, what else can you do after that? So yeah, her performance, really, really good. It's a story I'd actually been aware of before because it's referenced in One Piece, of all places. In Thriller Bark, there's a character that is kind of a little gag parody of this story. I think the way it's depicted, of course, is fantastic. I've always said that the Rakugo scenes in this series are the high watermarks. This is no exception. I think it's pretty cool to see the way that she has really refined this talent into something very unique. And I think in the critique at the end, when Shomei is like, I thought this was a little cheap, but it works because it's you. It's funny because it's you. And he's kind of saying, like, there are greater heights in pure Rakugo. There are greater achievements you can make. But you've found something unique that you can do because it's you. And because it's you, even though this doesn't hit the peaks that I want from the art form, you're still succeeding. You're still killing it. Yeah, really, really great stuff. Now we're going to see Karashi's stuff. He's probably going to get 4 chapters as well. Long arc, as I said. But I think it feels extra long because I just really, really want to see what Akane does. I'm just every chapter I'm like, is Akane gonna? Are we gonna find out? Even if we don't see her perform, it would make no sense to see her perform. Are we gonna somehow find out what her plan is? And obviously not. But I just really, really want to know. How is she gonna win without laughs? I need to know. I need to know. Okay, give it an A+ for the month. Very solid stuff. But it's kind of like the equivalent in this manga to just like one fight scene an entire month. It's which is great, but can sometimes have a lower ceiling. Okay. Next, let's talk about Harukaze Mound. Actually, let's check my messages quick yet again. Making sure that it's nothing I need to coordinate. I don't think so. Okay, I'll do that later. Okay, let's talk about baseball. This was a series that I was like pretty big on when it started last month. I thought just the spirit and attitude and stuff of it was great. I felt like what a breath of fresh air. What a spring breeze indeed to have a sports series with such a happy, uplifting attitude, with such a spirit of determination and overcoming adversity and succeeding in your own unique ways. And it just keeps leaning into this. He went and met with the rest of his team. We haven't really had much of an introduction to any of them yet, but slowly they're getting more fleshed out. They're going to start having their moments, and this is kind of seeding that for them. Excuse me. More backstory around our catcher, who's kind of our secondary protagonist, the one that organized this whole team. The way that he made a name for himself. The way that he overcomes his shortness and that adversity. Reminds me a lot of Kuroko. And I think in general this series might kind of have a Kuroko-esque vibe where it's not going to be outright superpowers, but it's going to get like damn close. Kind of just pushing the physical limits of baseball in more and more kind of unique and kind of like RPS matchup ways, which I think baseball is very well suited for. So that was great. I felt like that was a very nice thing to include early on, just that kind of like character reinforcement. Then they get this opportunity to square off right away against a really high-ranking team, a team that has actually made it to Koishan before. They start interacting with this team. Our protagonist overhears that they did it because they pity the catcher character, and he's like, hey, you don't need to pity him. We're going to prove that you don't need to pity him. But I liked that, like, that was like a motivator that put some stakes on the match. You know, just this kind of like fight for his dignity, this fight to prove that these disadvantages aren't just disadvantages, they're also kind of unique strengths. It like had that without making the other team like jerks. They were actually just trying to be like considerate in their own way. They were trying to give this other team an opportunity. They genuinely felt bad for the catcher, even if that pity is misplaced, like it came from a well-intentioned place. I really liked that. I think that's tough to do, to put stakes in the game without just being like, and the other team are real nasty. They spit on you. Yeah, I don't know. I think that was a good setup. It ends on a nice cliffhanger too, where his first pitch just gets like fucking homered way out of the park. And you're like, what? And then, in the next chapter you find out that it was all kind of a scheme. That it's all about the psychology of baseball and the psychology of conditioning batters, pitching to them over innings, setting up different expectations and stuff. And basically they get them into a situation where they're only hitting singles. They'll just let them hit little infield singles all day. And they're up. They got that one homer, so they're in a false sense of security. And they're just relying on the strength of their midfield. Really great, like, tactical interplay I felt like that was very convincing insofar as like both teams were acting rationally. Like it wasn't like they were getting tricked in like a stupid way, but rather it was like genuinely deceitful and interesting, and put them into this spot where now they can start subverting that and start pulling out their own lead. It's like it's pretty good, and just like the pacing through the chapter of having that cliffhanger, then having the twist at the start of the next chapter where you kind of find out why that happened, and then just like the non-narratively exposited, but like you just kind of observe and start to sculpt in your mind, oh, this is the tactics that they're going for, this is the strategy that they're making happen. Just that kind of like dawning realization, and then again just kind of like ending it on just like a climactic moment where you really are curious to see if it's going to pay off. Like just that repeated cycle of like cliffhanger, twist, dawning realization, cliffhanger. I think they're doing really, really well. Taking time to like profile characters on both teams, their history, their psychology, their strategy, seeing that manifest in the overall flow of the game. The next showdown begins. This guy Kikunaga, one of their big hitters, and his psychology, where he doesn't go after easy pitches. Instead, he strikes out on easy pitches, and tries to set up a situation where the pitcher gives him something weird, and then he counters that weirdness super decisively, gets the big homer. I don't know, man. I think it's like this. Not only am I really enjoying this, I'm just like, damn, like this makes me enjoy baseball. Like this makes me more excited to watch like IRL baseball. This makes me more excited to read more baseball manga. It's like proving to me what a good sport it is for manga, just by doing all of this so well and just being so interesting. And the ceiling is crazy too, because there's like so many types of pitchers, there's so many types of players, there's so many positions they can focus on, there's so many like interplay and dynamics, and they just get chunked out in these discrete dual moments of each play, each hit, each inning, each game, that they can really explore and develop these things. Like really, really solid stuff. I think the art is great. I think the character designs are great. The spirit of it is great. The tone of it is great. Really, really enjoying it. My favorite pure sports shonen in a while, surpassing Green Green Greens, which also shared a lot of these qualities, I think. Yeah, we're going to give it an A. Really good stuff. This is the one I'm most excited of these 4 new series. I think, I don't know, Ping Pong Panic is pretty sweet too, if you remember us talking about that a million years ago. Next, let's talk about Exorcist. Goddamn. You know though, okay, we got real mad about this last time. We did. Yup, we did. Yes, indeed, we did. Gave it an E+. It went down to the E tier. And this month is a lot better. It was a lot better. Not joking with you. I'm not, no fooling, man. It's like actual manga again. they did like actual manga things, okay? The first chapter, no, it was bad. It was really extremely tedious, excruciating stuff about his relationships and who he's closest to and blah, 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 blah. And let's just forget about that. Nothing of consequence. Then the bad guy just immediately shows up and attacks. And they were like, you said you would give us 3 days. And then, no, we're not. And it's like, what? Like, it's just... Okay, but anyways, moving on. Really, like, whack, baffling setting stuff. Baffling pacing, but whatever. But at least now there is a scenario. And I'm told that it's good when stories have a scenario, which is like a sequence of events that are related to one another. Now a scenario is unfolding where they are trying to ambush attack the enemy Hyo at this weird scheme wedding. And it's like you have a sense that something will work and that will lead to certain results, or maybe it won't work due to unknown factors, and that will lead to different results, which I've also heard is like a good element in storytelling, to have things happen. And so their scheme unfolds. She has like a counter scheme. It's nothing really that interesting, nothing really that substantial. Again, the pacing is really whack, where they'll have like 3 what appear to be like climactic cliffhangers per chapter, that then it just keeps going, and then the chapter just kind of ends on like a totally different random note. But whatever. It's coherent. Things are happening because of other things you've seen happen. So that's good. And now they're like running around the hotel. There's like battles kind of emerging. They have like tactics and plans, and there's fights, and it's all to build up to fighting against the Hyo, which is like a thing that will happen. And it's all pretty good. And the only thing I don't like is they all start like kissing him and being like, "This kiss is to empower you. Oh, I'll give you my kiss after the fight's over." And I was just like, okay, well, for the idiots out there, I guess they have to include a couple scenes like that. But outside of that, it was kind of like actual manga for a bit. And again, it's like the whole character of Gakuroko, I just find so embarrassing. Like, I've been reading manga since I was like 10, and I've been enjoying manga since I was 10, and I'm like an ardent defender of manga as an art form. That I think some of the greatest works of human literature are manga. And occasionally I still read manga and I just feel embarrassed to my core. And the character of Gakuroku is such a locus of embarrassment. It's such a feeling of like to be reading this and to be told this is the character you identify with. This is the character you find aspirational. It's embarrassing, man. Anyways, we're going to give it a D for the month. All the way back into the D tier. A very substantive lift. Climbing all the way back up from E+. Good job. Good job, New Age Exorcist. Keep it up. Keep it up. Alright, next let's talk about Shinobi Undercover. Earlier I said that the Rakugo arc where Hikaru had a performance that lasted all month was sort of like a battle that lasted all month. And this is a battle that lasted all month. Even by the end of last month, I was like, damn, this battle is going on a long time. But I think it'll wrap up soon. And then it didn't. Yodoka and Hayabusa fought the entire month. There was like a couple things I liked. One was that we find out that Yodoka was taught a special technique. And he puts himself into position for it. And then it turns out the special technique is him going, "I'm putting that aside for now." And I thought that was actually kind of fun. That was actually kind of cute. He's learned to set aside his concerns and not get bogged down with every single anxiety he has while he's trying to fight. That was good. And there was like a payoff for it, that he got to unleash his new attack because he was able to put that aside. And I thought that was going to be it. I thought that big climactic punch was the end of the battle. But no. Now there's another chapter of fighting. And Hayabusa has a flashback. And then they keep fighting. And then we cut back to Umineko and his sister. But they're just kind of doing the same routine too. Like, it hasn't really progressed or changed. They just kind of say the same things back and forth. And then it goes back to Yodoka and Hayabusa. And they're still fighting. And then the month ends and the fight finally ends too. And you're just like, what? That was all just like a contest. They weren't even like trying to kill each other or nothing. Like, what? And it's okay. And I've said before, the strength of the series is in its fight scenes, because they do like ninja choreography and they do ninja techniques, and it's good and weighty and speedy and impactful. And that's still true, but like, man, it just went like on, and I like don't really care about these characters, and I didn't really like this whole contrived scenario of them like battling, and the fact that Hayabusa has like electric powers, I just think is like very uninspired and lame. And Yorika didn't really do very interesting things either. The only interesting part was the putting this aside thing. So it really played to its strengths insofar as that it was just kind of like punch kick choreography. But like, it was just that. It just went on and on and on like that. Yeah, so I got pretty tired of it. And now it's obviously going to just jump right back into like the relationship plot line, big quotation marks around both of those, where they're going to go to some like summer festival that Aoi's going to take them to. And I was like, wow, that sounds like really tedious, but at least it's not this fight. At least we're moving on from this fight. Yeah, I don't know. I think just in general, this series just feels very insubstantial. There's like not really interesting world building. There's not really interesting character development. There's not really any emotional depth to anything so far. It's just some pretty good fight scenes, I'd say, is what it's got going for it. So yeah, we'll give it a B minus. It is what it is. I think I'm looking forward to a change of pace in it. Moreover, I'm like, it could just end. That'd be fine too. But they set up all the bad guys. The bad guys had a meeting around the table, so they're each gonna get an arc or something. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Next, let's talk about Hima-ten. Still has this absurd bikini cover. It's not super indicative of the series itself. Although there was one pretty lewd color cover spread too. So whatever. I don't know. Maybe. But, you know, I think overall this is still like a pretty nice series. And I use the word nice specifically. It's nice to the characters. It's nice to the reader. It's not that rude. It's not that stupid. It's not that crude. It's not that obnoxious. It respects the characters' emotions. It allows you to actually form a connection with them. And this month was mostly the same. Starting with another chapter with Terasaki. Terasaki wants to go shopping for Hima's products. Goes with our MC for some reason. I thought it was nice. It seemed to kind of suggest that Terasaki might be the fourth girl. So far, this series has stuck to the three-girl dynamic. Typically, I think it's a bad sign when harem rom-coms introduce a fourth girl. Not very many of them have been able to do it without really feeling like they're jumping the shark, without really feeling like the fourth girl is very flat. Although often the opposite of flat, if you know what I mean. Very one-dimensional, very much just kind of like a shot in the arm to try to get something else going in the series. And I don't think Terasaki is going to become that. But she does have like a little moment where she seems to kind of pine over Imori a little bit. And I was like, geez. And then in the next chapter, another character gets introduced that I was like, is this the fourth girl? Or in this case, fourth woman? And another hallmark of harem rom-com is to have the older woman love interest character. Which I wouldn't say is necessarily a shark jumping sign, because a lot of them introduce this earlier than later. And often these characters actually get fleshed out quite a bit. Like in We Can't Study, I think is a great example. The student-teacher character that used to be a figure skater ended up being like the most popular character by like a mile. There's a popularity poll where not only did she get first with flying colors, she actually got more votes than any other woman character in the history of Jump, which is insane. And this character they introduced too, she's an idol. She's actually the idol that Kanai covered, that performed at the Student Council Festival, which I thought was kind of a fun connection. I don't know what the hell role she's going to have in the plot. It looks like maybe she's going to go teach at their school or something. She's like done with being an idol. I assume she's gonna like show up some more. I don't know. She didn't show up again for the rest of the month, but whatever. But I was like, all right, this could be good. It also felt like very transparent and not really that interesting, very contrived, but whatever. Then it's kind of like, I don't know. I can't tell if this is going to end soon or not, because they're kind of making moves to introduce new characters, introduce new love interests. But then they also kind of have like the House of Cards in a perilous position where it's like Imori knows Kanai has a crush on someone. Hima-chan knows that Imori and Kanai have crushes on one another. Like the table is all set for a confession, and I think knowing the series so far and giving the series some credit, I don't think they're gonna like draw it out and to like a totally agonizing dead end. It kind of feels like the momentum is there to just kind of bring the series into its climax sooner than later. So it's kind of like hedging their bets, because now it's sort of like Himarine is trying to make like a big move, and she's like trying to actively seduce Imori because she feels like she's going to miss her window otherwise. First, she does this ridiculous strategy where she decides to give him the cold shoulder to see if it like kind of draws him in. And it's like kind of mean. I think this sort of like tactic is really bad. It's like psychologically for yourself, for this person that you claim to care about. I think it's really manipulative and not good. And I thought that it was going to be like she is hurt by it and she regrets it. And she's like, I don't need the advice of these stupid magazines. I'm just going to be honest. But no, it works. He does get pulled into it and is stressed and worried about why she's acting so cold to him. And then she's like, oh, well, if that's how you feel, how about we go on a date? And it like she gets what she wants by acting like a jerk. And I was like, that's bad. I don't like that. That feels pretty out of character for the series. That feels like they are stepping into like nonsense zone. The stupid disease is catching up. This stupid disease that they had managed to outrun for so long is nipping at their heels once more. But anyways, then they have the big date. They go to an aquarium and get some fancy food. It's nice. I like this Hima being assertive. She goes for like a big hug at the end. And I was like, this is good. They could have skipped this whole like baloney cold shoulder chapter and just been like, I need to be assertive. I'm going to take him on a date. And then just had this chapter. That would have been way better. So I don't know where this is going to go from here. It feels like Hima made her big play. So now something has to happen with the other girls. Probably Kana next. And then if it doesn't just like end with those kind of next round of everybody gets their chance moments, and they extend it and they do something else, they're gonna have to try really hard not to catch the stupid disease. I guess that's all I'll say. The stupid disease is knocking on the door like the Grim Reaper in that meme, and all the other harem rom-coms are piles of blood. You know the meme I'm talking about, or do I sound like deranged right now? It's a meme. It's a meme, you dip. It's knocking on the door of Hima-ten right now, and I hope Hima-ten does not answer. At the same time, I do wish it dies insofar as that I would like it to just have a nice finale from here and end in like 10 chapters. I think that would be nice. So we'll see. I don't know. I think it's a B for the month. Next, let's talk about Ekiden Bros. This is another new one from last month. Last month, I believe we only read one chapter of it. So the vast majority of it were read in this month. I was like kind of into it. I like the subject of long distance running. At the same time, I had a very dweeby complaint, which is that it seemed to be promoting unhealthy training behavior. That problem was not fixed. They still are treating running like a superpower, and kind of off-screening a lot of the like safety and regulation and build-up that people do before a run, and just being like, if you lock in, you can run 10 miles, guaranteed, lock in now, and don't worry about tearing all your ligaments. So anyways, they do a little bit more of establishing stuff, and then sudden 2-year time skip. Then the series kind of like really begins. He's in university. He's joining a running team. It's kind of like all that other stuff was just sort of like character table setting, which I think is fine. So he goes to day 1 of university practice. He runs into his rival from high school. It's a little yaoi baity, I'm gonna say. I think they're aiming for the Fujoshi crowd with this a little bit. Just with the rival dynamic, the character designs to some extent. It's like, okay. I have nothing against that. Go for it. It's a healthy part of the Jump ecosystem, is series that aim for the Fujoshi support. I think it can add a lot to the series, because if you are trying to write Fujo bait characters, that means almost inherently they're going to be characters that have at least a little bit of depth and a little bit of character to give them something to ship. Then there's like, this is one thing I really didn't like that I thought was just so lazy, is like the rival going like, you're not a good runner. I remember you weren't very good. Oh no, the old lady from earlier in the chapter, her purse got snatched by a dude on a motorcycle. In Japan, yeah, okay. Sure, the one time per year that happens. Alright, I'm gonna use my long distance running ability to chase down the biker that stole the purse and get the purse back. It's like, what? Especially because right after this, they do this like warm-up race wherein the main character wins and everybody acknowledges his strength and goes, wow. And it's like, why did he have to have this like stupid purse snatching scenario to prove himself before his rival like one chapter before he would have anyways? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, what? What's the point of that? So then they arrive at training, more rivals are introduced, the captains are introduced, they talk about the gravity of the Ekiden as a race. This led me to look up stuff about the Ekiden, which I don't know why I didn't initially. I think only then did I really realize that this was like a real thing, and that the way they were talking about it, I was like, is it really this big a deal? And I looked it up, and yeah, it is this big a deal. It's really, really cool. I highly suggest reading the Wikipedia article about it. It has such a history to it. There's so many like rituals and like strategies and just like lore baked into it, just from the fact that people have been running the same race for like 100 years. So that excited me, like to know that the series was anchoring itself in this moment, that it's building up to this moment, that has so much real life weight behind it, that has so much depth to it because of that. I was like, okay, that adds a lot of potential to it. Then he wins this warm-up race, as I said. He establishes more rivals. They learn his origin, that he's the son of this famous running coach. But the captain encourages them to disregard that because effort is the equalizer. Which is a nice attitude, but again, effort and safety are the equalizers. Not doing stupid things to destroy your body is the equalizer. The one thing that disappointed me, though, is that the actual like race scene, not that exciting. Not really that much to it. And it's kind of like, what can you do to make foot races exciting in manga? I think there are things. I don't want to get too in-depth right now because I'm not going to be able to think of great examples off the top of my head. But I think I've seen it where I'm like really caught up in it, and the sense of like speed and acceleration is very well conveyed. The sense of desperation is really well conveyed. And here, I don't know if it's just because it was just a warm-up race and they're saving the juice for when it really gets to the meat of it. But I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's it. He just wins. Which is not a great sign, because this whole series is going to be about racing. But yeah, we'll give it a B. I think it's all right. I like the art style, too. The art style is very fun and expressive. We'll see, though. We'll see. Okay. Next, let's talk about Nice Prison. And I believe this is our last series. Which is great, because I gotta go to the bathroom. And I gotta respond to some messages. And I gotta go to dinner. A busy night. Really glad I made time for this, though. Okay, so, Nice Prison. I add these series in a random order, by the way. That's what I've been doing lately. And Nice Prison, I think, got last season twice in a row, which is kind of interesting. I said before that this series was growing on me, that at the start, I thought it was pretty stupid, but now I'm kind of like, I'm having fun. And so it was with this run of chapters as well. I think the big thing that changed for me is that they started actually like doing a plot, which sounds weird to say for a gag manga, but it's kind of in the vein of like Bobo Bobo or something, where there is like a sense of escalation and causality and characters that didn't get introduced and then carry over arcs, settings, an overarching goal. Basically taking those very bare structural elements from like battle shonen and just taking all of the meat off of them and putting gags where the meat used to be, I think is a pretty fun way to write a manga. And I feel like we hadn't had one of those in a while. And I like reading them. It's great. I like Bobo 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 too. They have this model prisoner showdown against the dark model prisoner, where they have to compete to get points in terms of who is the most model prisoner. Thought that was fun. There was some 4 coma in that chapter. I don't know why there isn't 4 coma every time. I like their 4 coma jokes. Then they explore the trauma of the dark model prisoner. They do these kind of like barrage jokes too that it reminds me of SZS, where it's just like a bunch of single panel examples of a specific scenario or a specific, in this case, type of trauma or whatever. And it's like a mix of like relatable stuff, weirdly mundane stuff, just truly bizarre stuff, truly traumatic stuff that's mixed in to juxtapose. SZS was like the grandmaster of this. SZS would take it so far too that they would do a bunch of examples and then they would just be like, and many more, and there would just be a panel that's like a list of other such examples. This doesn't go quite that far, but it's that same kind of like pacing of humor. That same sort of thing where like even if each individual one doesn't really land for you, there's just so many that it's fun. Then they're still trying to track down the final boss. They're intercepted by these weirdly pathetic ghosts that complain about stuff. There's actually some lore and world building about the history of the prison, which is, I'm not going to go so far as to say interesting. And again, it's just sort of like the structure of that, but it's like gag. But I like appreciated that they did it. It seemed like they were doing it not just to make jokes, but so that there was something, so that there was an actual like story behind the story. Then the female model prisoner shows up. She uses like a drinking party attack. Silly fight scene. Seems like the ball and chain guy reappeared. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, right? The art's pretty lazy. A lot of the comedy is pretty lazy. I'm not even going to say that I find it like uproariously funny. Like, it doesn't really make me laugh very often at all. Compared to something like Roboco, for sure, I'm just kind of like, eh. But something about just like the whole structure, everything together, all these kind of mid elements being structured in this way, I want to read more. Like, I am getting to the point where I'm like, ooh, what's gonna happen in Nice Prison this week? So they're getting me. Somehow they're like grinding down my brain. And the little smooth nub that's left is lighting up and going, ooh, Nice Prison. Okay, we'll give it a B as well. And yeah, that's it. Woohoo. This was our last tier list from June. As I said at the time, this is as big as the tier list will get, surely, insofar as we had a whole bunch of ending series and a whole bunch of starting series that, you know, both those categories end up on the tier list. You can notice a phenomenon starting here. We got One Piece, of course, at the tippity top, and then a couple series in S-, and then a whole bunch of series in A. This tier list is an even more extreme example of that. Only one series, unsurprisingly One Piece, managed to make it into the S bracket, and then a whole bunch of series are in the A zone, which means I'm liking them, and I think they're really solid, and I'm having a good time, and there's moments that I think are worthy of calling out, but they're not getting to that point of superlative, mind-blowing excellence yet. And not that many in the B tier, too, which is Not even that I dislike it, but just sort of like, needs improvement. You know, some stuff you can improve on for sure. And then, of course, I might be blocked by my webcam. No, it's not. Niue's Exorcist in the very bottom. This is my note-taking document, by the way. You'll never see that again. Okay, that's all. Thank you for joining me on this manga adventure. I've been trying to get better about saying this, but if you enjoyed this video, even if you just enjoyed parts of it and skipped around or whatever and decided to watch the outro too, give it a like. Why not give it a like? Why not give it a comment? Why not hit subscribe, hit the bell? I've been embracing a feeling of like, I don't really want to make like YouTubing a career or anything like that, but I've decided to just acknowledge the fact that no, it is nice when I get comments. It is nice when I see that a video is getting likes. It is nice to see the subscriber count go up. I think it's fine to enjoy that without like going nuts and being like, that number is my self-worth. I think you can aim for the middle there. So yeah, please like and subscribe. Please share it with your jump reading friends if you're so inclined. Even if it's just to say, hey, listen to this idiot talk about Sakamoto Days. They're making fun of us. Yes, I am making fun of you. Okay, goodbye.